meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So Ashlyn, we have to do a roll call attendance. So would you mind calling the roll for attendance? Councilmember Henry.
Aye. Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye. Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
Aye. Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
So she's trying to work on mute issues.
I, Joy McKnight. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Mayor Johnson.
I, Courtney Johnson. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning into tonight's meeting. We value our residents and community members, and we want to make sure that anyone who wants to participate and provide input can do so. To provide input, join the meeting via Zoom conferencing services. Use the quick link at the bottom of cityofcarver.com. Information related to joining the meeting can be found by clicking on the meeting agenda. We ask that anyone wishing to address the council wait to be recognized by the mayor, be respectful, wait for your turn to speak, and don't speak over one another. Callers will still need to provide their names and addresses for the record. All right. With that, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll make a second.
And we have a second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All right. Ms. Doan, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye. Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye. Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
Aye. Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
I, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right. Motion passes 5-0. All right. We have community comments for anything not on tonight's agenda. Going once, going twice. All right, presentations and reports. So first up is you, Ashlyn. So there was a contest from the League of Minnesota Cities for Mayor for a Day. And there, how did you hear about it?
I don't know. My dad just told me about it.
Okay.
I think it was in the Chaska Herald.
Oh, okay. So they were looking for essays from kids in elementary and middle school on what they would do if they were mayor for a day. So Ashlyn wrote up something real quick and submitted her entry, and you won honorable mention. So putting Carver on the map, congratulations. So with that, we have a proclamation for you, which reads, whereas the League of Minnesota Cities sponsored a Mayor for the Day contest each year to help raise awareness among young people about the importance of city services, and whereas Ashlyn Down, an 11-year-old Carver resident, independently wrote an essay and entered the Mayor for a Day contest on October 22nd, 2020, and whereas Ashlyn said her first priority as mayor would be to make education free for everyone, because whether you're 5 or 95, it is never too late to learn. And whereas next, Ashlyn said that as mayor, she changed the light bulbs to LED and tried to reduce our city's carbon footprint, because the earth is changing and it is our job to make sure it's changing for the better. And whereas Ashlyn also said in her essay that she would involve all the residents in helping make decisions, because they all live here, they will be affected by any changes, and it is important that all ideas will be heard. And whereas another thing Ashlyn said she'd do as mayor is make sure people know the coronavirus is real and make masks available for free if anyone needed any. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Carver acknowledges that Ashlyn Dunn received an honorable mention in the League of Minnesota Cities Mayor for a Day contest, and be it further resolved that the City of Carver recognizes her for the wonderful job on the essay and her interest in government at such a young age. So there you go. Congratulations. You're welcome.
is,
Go
is
down.
In front of the flags.
they just look at like studies that were already done.
So,
Like they don't submit like a,
why don't you hold that, and we'll have you stand in between.
In front of our nameplate. On
Which
the
it is.
flags.
In front of the flags.
All right, I'll walk.
I'm smiling, but.
Prove it.
All right,
Congratulations.
congratulations. And it's weird this year because some cities like pick the kids up in fire trucks and with all this crazy COVID stuff, we can't do anything that's super fun, but hopefully you're having fun and that you can be involved tonight, so. All right, moving on to item 5.2, the Jonathan Carver Parkway Project Construction Update. Mr. Lannis.
Good evening.
Hey.
I'm gonna share my screen. Wrong one.
Got a lot of overdue meetings there.
Back. Done. Share. Heard. I have done this a few times. Screen 2 is supposed to be the other one here. There we go. We'll do this one. Okay. Well, I think you've all heard about trails quite a bit lately here, so we're going to talk about some of the major road closures ahead. If the barrels and everything else you see out on the road doesn't give you enough of a reminder, we are going to have some major activities coming up in the next few weeks. I want to give you a heads up on here. So we've talked all about the trail closures. We've put notices out about what to expect throughout the remainder of the project. Right now, we're trying to get a broad word out that trails along the entire corridor are going to be impacted, and we've got that message out for the most part here. We did have quite a bit of effort going into how kids needed to get to school and such, so you'll see this as a result of that. So we're having a little bit of discussion about this underpass over here, about whether or not that's going to be necessary to close that temporarily while they do some widening of the underpass. That's going to be coordinated with the school, and we'll continue working with them on the best way to get the kids to school while building everything that needs to be built in a timely manner. So, you know, there's a lot of discussions about schedule versus, versus ultimately what the contractor will allow the contractor to do. And so we're asking them to make concessions in a number of cases, or the county is, I should say. All the while we are faced with a very, very aggressive schedule. So the impacts are pretty severe as you build this job, but we're trying to balance out those two things. So this is the next big impact, is the upcoming interchange closures here. So we'll do this one first here. This is end of April. It's going to be a weekend closure, so we talked about rush hour to basically the end of the day of rush hour on Friday to Monday. We're going to try and leave a little bit of contingency into this here. So you're talking through the weekend and definitely into Monday, weather pending. They're going to go as fast as they can to get this done, but we're trying to leave the notice open that if things don't go perfect, they're not going to stop and open it back up again. They're going to keep building until it's done. And so this is a very notable one here. So you're closing the eastbound ramps onto 11. So everybody coming eastbound is going to have to pop off at 43, come down and back up to get into Carver. And if you're trying to go to, for example, Mills Fleet Farm, you're going to have to go up 43, up and down to get to Mills. This is probably the most challenging closure environment that you're going to get, because nobody's really acting early on things are closed ahead and making a quick movement to hop onto a detour route. They're effectively going to drive by and end up farther than they intended to and have to drive back. So That's the reality. I mean, we have to be realistic about what's likely here. There's a lot of people that are going to blow by this and end up down at Engler. So this is going to have message boards. It's going to have tremendous signage out there in advance of this closure. The county is going to be doing everything possible to try and notify folks of this upcoming closure for the weekend. We are going the extra mile of making some direct contacts to businesses. We are fully expecting Mills to say this is a really tough closure. Same with Quick Trip. All the businesses in this area have trucking that have to adjust to this. So those are a little bit less of a email notice or widespread notice. That those are direct phone calls and emails to key managers of those businesses to let them know of what's coming. But this is the one that is going to get some attention when it happens here, and that's end of the month. And the purpose of this is to rebuild the south portion of the interchange. And so that's getting these well, it's not the ramps, but it's the ramp terminal. It's where the signal is basically being adjusted, and the pipe crossings right through here. So this entire thing is going to be all ripped up for the weekend. So the other one is May 7th. That's a week later. This is the underpass, and that is not quite so impactful. But what you will see here is a lot of folks coming down off the interchange and finding other routes to get where they want to go. And so you're basically talking about a lot of turnaround traffic here. Lots of signage will be up there to notify them that this is closed ahead. But I think we all know that folks want to get somewhere, they're going to drive down there until there's barricades sitting there stopping them, and we deal with that all the time. So there's going to be a lot of folks that are kind of reroute onto local roads, and there's going to be a lot of folks that turn around here. But same thing going northbound, there's going to be a lot of reroute traffic that's happening here and turnaround traffic. But again, that's going to be highly publicized on the roadway itself before this closure happens, and these are the detour routes for it. So we've got two very big moments, and the first weekend of May and second weekend of May. And if weather hits, thunderstorms, it's going to be pushed back. It'll be another weekend. So right now, these are the notices that are going out. And I think those are big enough items that I'm just going to stop here with questions. I think you'll see all the construction happening on both sides of the road. So fire away. Any questions?
Go ahead, Christy.
So I think you're right, Dan, that people are going to end up, if they're coming eastbound on 212, they're going to go right past that 41 detour. I would be one of those people most likely, say there's got to be something closer. But I think it's very good planning to say they're going to end up down on Engler. Is there a way that we can sign at Engler then to have them route them back? So when they take that exit as their first exit off, they know which way they're going to get back?
That is so far away from the destination. There's the sentiment that by the time they've hit that location, they're either just going to hook a UE at the interchange itself, which is pretty clear, just going across the bridge and coming back, or they're going to go elsewhere. And so no, there isn't, because we don't think it's going to catch your typical driver that makes it that far.
So if they're coming back westbound, then they're going to be able to take that exit to go north and into Fleet Farm then?
Yeah. So they can take basically a U-turn or a flip over the interchange and come back, but they'll only be able to go to the north to Fleet Farm. And so they're still not going to be able to go south, but they would be able to go north to Fleet Farm or hook a right onto 61 and come into the town that way. So the westbound isn't nearly as problematic as the eastbound. Westbound is you still exit, and instead of going left, you're going to have to flip around and come on 61 into town. So, yes.
And then we had talked about having signs that were coming from the Jordan exit. Does this trigger those going up now, or is that later in the project? When you're coming from Jordan, I should say the Jordan exit, but when you're coming from Jordan off of 169, we had talked about having signage there that says the traffic detour, things like that.
Yeah, for the weekend closure, you mean?
Will that be up for that, or is that later in the project?
Well, there's quite a bit of signage down there, advanced signage, when the JCP is shut down.
Okay.
I'd have to look at what we have set up down there, to be honest with you, Christy. I haven't looked at it as far as when that goes up, but there is advanced signage in there. I just have to check whether or not it's put up these weekend closures.
Okay. That's all for now. Thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? Glenn? Glenn's got nothing. Joy's shaking her head no. Lori's shaking her head no. Dan, thank you. I appreciated you mentioned the personal touch of talking to the folks at Fleet Farm and Quick Trip who will understandably have to make some changes. I appreciate that. It looks like this first shutdown of the on and off ramps at 212 is going to be pretty significant. Is there going to be more than one shift working that? Or just,
Yeah,
just sundown?
it's not. It's funny that you should ask, because we were actually talking about that the other day, that it is not mandated as 24/7. There are circumstances in which you basically shut it down and they're working every single hour until it's reopened. This didn't quite hit that threshold of requiring, work at 3 a.m. On through the night. It is right by a residential area. And so we're trying to balance this out a little bit, get it done quick, get it done on the weekend, but not quite that impactfully, both from a noise perspective and quite frankly, it's really tough working conditions at 5 a.m. And so it's long hours, but not 24/7.
Okay, and then I also kind of heard you leave the door open for a worst case scenario. This stays open through Monday if the job doesn't get completed.
Yeah. What they're going to do with weather is they look at it. If it's thunderstorms planned for Saturday, Sunday, for example, they're just going to call it on the weekend. They're just going to say it's not going to happen, and they're going to pull it and do the exact same thing another weekend. If, for example, they think they can get it done and everything goes really well, all the weather plays out well, they might be done Sunday night, early Monday morning. There's that scenario where there's a few challenges. Once this starts, they're going to keep going through Monday. Our notifications will tend to be on the conservative side of it could go through Monday, and hopefully we're done early. So that's the way we prefer to notice it right now, because things happen once you break ground, and that's how it's set up.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That is all the questions that I have. I appreciate the update, Dan.
Yeah, thanks.
Moving on to 5.3, the Carver County update. Commissioner Fahey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Mayor Johnson.
All right, I think we're going to pull up your presentation here, and I think Vicky's running the slides for you. Okay.
Everybody see that?
Yep, we can see your slides.
Yes, and thank you, Vicki. If you want to go to the project location, everyone is aware of that, from Carver to Cologne.
Thank you.
And then moving on to the staging slide, we're shooting for 3 major phases. There is no planned closures of Highway 212. You can see the individual closures of the various intersections. And then we are doing the coordination with Highway 43 and Highway 11 with that portion of that detour, as Dan had just discussed, and how that's going to impact everything. So we'll work in conjunction to all that. And then the stages, you have experienced or seen some of the tree removal taking place and some building removal. And that first stage is going to be done on May of 2022. And then the second stage going through August of 2022. And the bulk of the work is going to be off of the existing highway, and then we'll shift to the new alignment during that second stage. And then the goal is to complete all the work in October of 2022. Vicki, if you could move a couple slides then to the design detail, one more slide. And You'll notice in this slide just the 10-foot wide soldier, and we're doing that mainly for the tractors and the combines, and we just want to acknowledge that there is going to be heavy farm equipment on the new portion, and we just want to accommodate that going forward. But roughly 4.5 miles of work. And moving on to the next slide, you can see the allocation of the various funds, the federal funds, and then the federal freight funds. And then also you can see the Carver County sales tax funds, that amount being roughly $518,000. And originally that amount was about $12 million. And the bids came in, and you can go to the next slide, Vicki, and the bids came in at that roughly $28 million. The estimation was somewhere about 48 to 50 million. And so we were very pleased with the bids on where they came in at. And then we're taking that roughly 11 million, 11 and a half then, and now we're allocating that to the Cologne to the NYA portion. So that's very good news. And we awarded the bid to Mathewitz Construction. They're located out of Sleepy Eye, and they have done work in the county before. Moving on then to the COVID update. Everyone probably has heard that the cases are on a rise. The new 7-day case average now as of April 15th is 55 cases, and that's has been the highest in general since about December. And we recorded 92 cases on April 8th, and that was the highest single day case or cases in the last 4 months. Moving on to the next slide, as of April 15th, the county has had 9,696 cases. And as you can see, the uptick continues. The good news, though, on the next slide is the vaccination. Right now, about 38% of Carver County has been vaccinated. And then 47% of the Carver County residents have either been diagnosed with COVID or have been vaccinated. And Carver County continues to lead the metro in vaccination rates for residents 65 or older. So that's great news. Going on to the next slide, we continue to double our efforts with Public Health Director Dr. Richard Scott in our partnership with Ridgeview and the Waconia Event Center. They have been on most days averaging about 700 vaccinations per day, and there has been some days where they've done 12 to 1,300 vaccinations, so that's incredible. And then moving on to the last slide, as hopefully you've all heard, we are the healthiest county in Minnesota once again for the 9th consecutive year, and that score well on the human behavior measures, the teen birth rates, the access to exercise, and then plus first in social and economic factors like high school completion and the low unemployment. And I just really wanted to share my appreciation for all of you, because it is truly a community effort for the county, the cities, the townships, and all of our community partners and the residents. And as we make sure everyone has access to the things that encourage a healthy lifestyle. So we look forward to that continued partnership with all of you, and especially the city of Carver. And we really want to make the county a healthy place to live for a lifetime of good health. With that, I'll open it up if anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Commissioner Fahey? See nothing from Christy. Joyce shaking her head. Nothing from Lori. Glenn has a question.
John, do you happen to know the fatalities, total fatalities in Carver County from COVID?
I think the number is at 45.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Fahey, thank you for the update. Thank you for when you were talking about 212, talking about the expansion project that starts in Carver and goes to Cologne. Commissioner Fahey and I spoke this afternoon, and I explained to him when the press release came out for that, and Brent is my witness who had to listen to me losing my mind a little bit. It said that the project went from Chaska to Cologne, which there's no, as we all know, there is no part of Chaska that this project touches. So appreciate the messaging with that. So thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, John.
All right, moving on to item number 6, public hearings. 6.1, street and alley vacation. And before I hand it over to you, Ms. Smith, I am going to open up the public hearing. So go ahead, Erin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we do have a public hearing for a project that is several steps, and tonight is just one of them. So I'm going to talk you through what the entire process is going to look like, and then ask that you hold the public hearing related to the street and alley vacations. So the street and alley vacations are required prior to a land swap that's going to happen between the city and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or the USFW, throughout the rest of the slides. So the purpose of this land swap is that the city needs it for the levee project, where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife actually has a bridge that is on city property. So they would obviously prefer to own the land that their bridge goes to. So this project came to fruition really nicely, roughly the same amount of land for the land swap. But prior to that land swap happening, there needs to be street and alley vacations, which we're contemplating tonight. So the visual on the screen right now is the general area in blue on the bottom of the screen is where the bridge is located from U.S. Fish and Wildlife property onto City of Carver property. Green is generally where the area is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife currently owns that will go to the City of Carver for the levee project. The drilling into the exhibits, the pretty technical documents that show the actual areas for vacation. The jagged section on the left is the area obviously along the levee. The area on the right is the City of Carver property where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Bridge currently goes to. So I took a screenshot of our GIS. It shows the U.S. Fish and Wildlife property, their bridge going directly onto city property. So for the land swap to happen again, street and alley vacations need to occur first. So a couple of details. Again, a public hearing is required. Something that was a little bit different about this process compared to other street and alley vacations that we've done together previously is that the DNR needed to complete a review. They're an adjacent property owner, and they required a 60-day review. So they had 60 days to take a look at the land swap details with the vacation included. So there is a packet from the DNR included in the packet, and the commissioner needed to find that the vacations were in public benefit. They could use the land for access to public waters and conservation of natural resources. They found all of those to be true, so their review is favorable for the vacation of the street and alleys in this area. Additionally, notice was run in the Chaska Herald, letting people know about the street and alley vacations pursuant with state statute. So at this time, I'll open it up for discussion, and we will walk through the public hearing.
All right. First off, are there any public comments? Are you able to change the screen so we can see folks?
Is that better?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I thought Brent was driving. Forgot about that. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no public comments, we can close the public hearing. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry
I'll second.
and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All right, Ashlyn, you are up. Can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry,
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock,
Hi, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayre,
Hi, Lori Sayre.
Councilmember McKnight,
Aye, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, council, any questions? I see Lori shaking her head. I see Christy shaking her head, I think. see Joy shaking her head. Mr. Henry?
Regarding the land swap, just refresh me, the original bridge that went down, what was it, Ash Street and crossed, was for the farmsteads that used to be down there, correct? All right. Yes, they were. Fish and Wildlife on their green property.
I can't.
Sorry.
You might have to leave it.
Sorry, guys.
They put you in the back.
It's Larry's fault.
It is my.
I'll be able to.
So you can join, I just don't think you can join with audio. Okay.
Councilmember Henry, I can speak a little bit to some of the steps. So this, like Aaron had mentioned, this is the first step. So the second step will be a coordination with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services legal team along with the city attorney. So they can't accept or kind of move forward with the process to do the land swap until our streets and alleys are vacated within the parcel that we're proposing to exchange with them.
Okay.
So they, if you think about it, they need the blackboard cleared, and then they can move forward. And so the next step would be our city attorney reviewing a document that they'd proposed to do the land swap. This is, it seems like it's a relatively short process that, Aaron mentioned regarding the public hearing, but I think we've been working on this for over 2 years at this point. So we've accomplished, or hopefully soon to be, one major milestone related to this, because the property adjacent, or the property that the city would be picking up adjacent to kind of Depot Park, Casey's, is essential if the city wanted to move forward with doing levee improvements in that area.
How far down towards the Riverside Park Bridge does that parcel of property take in?
I'd have to, Aaron, I'll defer to you on that.
I'm just curious, how we have the wraparound on that. Just curious as to the amount of land there.
As you start to trace, I'm going to go to this one. As you start to trace some of these, like the jagged line of it, you'll see, I'm on the wrong screen, you'll see it in this area here. So it begins roughly here.
Okay. And then as far as how much land will we be swapping, is it going to be exact amount? Or I know that the bridge, when it was originally put in, it was for the farmsteads and the ball field that used to be down there. That bridge was there for eons, and then a number of years ago, that bridge just gave away, and I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife, in order to have access for the walkers that were coming across, they just rebuilt that bridge, if I'm not mistaken, Larry.
And if I could, and we could, Councilmember Hammer, we're not
No.
exactly prepared to get into like all the details.
Okay.
Of that. So because tonight, the public hearing is specifically related to vacating the alleyways and streets within these two parcels. We can provide you with a comprehensive overview of the agreement and the acreage. We just don't have that ready for you this evening.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Aaron, my only really comment is with some of these street names that we're kind of losing or giving up in the vacation, I would love to see these in the city of Carver in some shape or form going forward. This is what the founders of Carver came up with for street names. So like Garden Street and Lime Street, while not super incredibly original, it is a little bit of a homage to history to make sure that those street names live on. So that's only my kind of call out and kind of note that I wanted to make, that we don't lose those.
Noted. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion. Oh, so go ahead.
Lori, I have one question. With these changes, does any resident have to change their address?
Nobody lives there.
So all of the property is currently, it's platted just with the plat from the 1800s. It hasn't been developed in any way, and it's not currently addressed in our system.
Okay.
Yeah, these are essentially all river bottom areas, council members here, so they wouldn't be buildable or able to be developed at any point.
Christy, were you?
I can make a motion, Courtney, if we're ready.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 114-21, which is a resolution vacating portions of platted alleyways.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock
I'll second that.
and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All right, Ashlyn, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
I, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
Aye, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry. I will second
I'll
that
second.
motion. Sorry, Joy. Motion by Councilmember Henry, second by Mayor Johnson. Any further discussion? All right. Ashlyn, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
I, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
Aye, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right, motion passes unanimously again, 5-0. All right, moving on to 8.1, the Hammers annexation. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I forgot I was back to back. Let me share my screen again. Alrighty, so tonight we are reviewing annexation for the Hammers property. We recently reviewed a concept that I'll have on the screen in a couple slides, and we'll talk through the details of what annexation means for our community and the process so far. So in the process right now, again, we've reviewed the concept plan at Planning Commission and City Council level, so we are in for annexation. The City Council is the only group that reviews annexation, does not require Planning Commission review. Only group at the city level. There are several other reviews that I'll mention. So the only group at the city level. So annexation 101, let's talk about what it means, what it does for the community. So annexation in general adds additional property into the city of Carver. We have an orderly annexation agreement with Dahlgren Township, which makes annexation pretty slick for us. It lays out the rules, what type of reviews need to happen, and the steps that are required. Through the review of the orderly annexation agreement, the application and the property, the township does a 30-day review. The city additionally does a review. And then the resolution tonight, after discussion from the city council, essentially authorizes me to make application to the State Office of Administrative Hearings. So that's the state body that completes the review for annexation for the entire state. When you think about annexation and when we add new property to the city of Carver, the default zoning is always agriculture. So if you think about projects that we do, rezoning is, I don't want to say always required, but it's as darn close as you can get to always being required, since we're bringing property into the city with a project in mind. Typically lately it's been residential, so thinking through Timber Creek was recently annexed, and then this is the Hammers property tonight. After annexation, the city has land use control over that property. So anything that's not in city limits, if we get a call about it, it's typically planning and zoning done by the county. But once we extend our city limits through annexation, we are then in control. So we have things like zoning control, so we can rezone a property. Our city code then also steps in. So if a development project wants to come in post-annexation, they need to meet the requirements of our city code as opposed to the county where they may have been previously. Some things that annexation does not do, it does not contemplate the specifics of a project. So tonight, I'm not asking that you review lot layouts, number of lots, sidewalks, trails, any of that. We're just asking if this project can move forward with annexation. And something else to note, that we're still really early in the process usually, so this does not approve preliminary or final plat. Should the applicant choose to move forward, those would be applications they could make that would go before this group as they continue through the planning process. So some specifics. The City Council reviewed the Hammers concept at their March 1st meeting. I have on the screen the concept that was reviewed. Generally, it's about 67 lots with a large wetland in the center. We talked at length about adding potentially a trail system. Again, not things we're talking about at this point, just hoping to jog your memory a little bit about what we're talking about. And then in the red, the property is outlined for some location purposes. It's directly west of Meridian Fields or the D.R. Horton project that's directly south of 212. Generally north of Timber Creek, the project you'll be reviewing preliminary plat in May, recently did annexation, and generally near Carver Elementary. So again, tonight, just annexation, no project details. I'll open it up for discussion.
Any questions, Council?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Erin, so when we're looking at your PowerPoint there, it talks about the township reviews. And I understand that the township reviews. What is the township actually reviewing? Is it something that they can stop the annexation, or help me understand what their review is about?
Sure. So under our orderly annexation agreement, if a project meets that agreement, stopping it is not likely, but they are able to take a look. Something to think about that the township reviews, they look at the project and we think about access points. So there is currently a township road that runs down into the Song property that is currently a township road, something that they contemplate that we have to go back and forth and figure out who then has ownership of that road once the project is annexed. So it's a time for the township to review and then ask us some questions since we generally know more of the details of the project. And then they have a 30-day review period that I believe they meet as they take it through their town board just to make sure it essentially checks their boxes. So making sure they get the application, making sure they get the application fee, making sure we've thought through some of the township roads, who will maintain them, who does snow clearing once the project moves into the city.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Joy, Lori, any questions? None from Joy, none from Lori.
Yep. Does this fall in accordance with the complete annexation agreement that we have with Dahlgren? It does. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 115-21, approving the annexation of the Hammers property in accordance with an orderly annexation agreement 1428.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll make a second.
We have a second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All right. Can you call the roll, please, Ashley?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye. Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
Hi, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
I, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. All right, motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, the Carver Square Developers Agreement, Dahlgren Road Improvements and Assessment. Mr. Lannis.
I'm going to try this again. Let's try and get green. This time, let's try this one. Let's see. All right, what do we have up?
The middle.
All right, got it. Okay. So we're going to talk about Dahlgren. If you had a chance to review the memo, it's somewhat of a long tail here, but just to cue you in on the location here, we're looking at this segment of Dahlgren, just west of JCP. So I will bring you back to the beginning of this. Back in December, of course, you approved a joint powers agreement with the county to build County Road 11. A part of that project is Dahlgren Road. It's necessary to build 11, and there's some tie downs and improvements associated with Dahlgren that were really necessary improvements. And so that project, of course, had a funding plan, which you've seen multiple times. And part of that plan includes how to fund Dahlgren. Now, as we put the plan together for 11, there is an understanding that there is a prior developed agreement going back to 2017 between the city of Carver and Carver Square subdivision. So there's a couple of prior developers agreements that basically acted as deferred compensation for the project, and that there's agreed upon dollar amounts set forth for future improvement of Dahlgren Road. And so that applied to Carver Square, and additionally there was that agreement with Oak Tree for $131,600, in which they prepaid that dollar amount, and the city's been holding that ever since until such time as applied to the improvements on Dahlgren. Now, the one that we're going to be focused on tonight is the Carver Square, as that was not prepaid. That was pending and triggered by construction. And we are now at the point of constructing Dahlgren. The project has been bid with County Road 11. And so there's $135,700 that would be effectively paid for through the agreement terms, which is an acting assessment that gets either paid at this time or can be, by the discretion of the property owner, applied to their tax rolls here. So it's a standard process to have a assessment such as this, that they waive their rights to appeal of the dollar amount. So it's I look at it as deferred compensation. It was held until such time that trigger allowed the city to enact the assessment. And so what we have is the action that needs to be taken here. We have improvements on Dahlgren. The construction is proceeding. We have a prior developers agreement that said this is compensation that will be applied to the roadway when it is going to be constructed. And so we are at a point of adopting the assessment roll for Dahlgren Road. And I know that sounds a lot like the 429 process that you went through with the 2019 project, but it's a little bit different in that this was already pre-set up through the DA, waivers of appeal. This dollar amount would be assessed to this subdivision and the lots of the subdivision, and this dollar amount, should construction equate to more than the dollar amount set forth in the DA. That dollar amount was $135,700. Of course, with Oak Tree adding $131,600, those two combined, we looked at those together. That had to be exceeded by the construction amount of Dahlgren. The bids from the county put the improvement cost at $370,000, plus a number of items that were not broken out separately, such as design and storm sewer. So the numbers are over $400,000 for Dahlgren, and the numbers that were set aside through the DA was 260 plus thousand between the two. So there's really no modifications to what was in the DA for the dollar amount. And so the next steps that we would be looking at is acting on that agreement between the city and the developers agreement that would impose that assessment or request payment for that full amount to 3 lots in Carver Square, which I can show you if you're interested in how the plat lays out. And the action tonight would be adopting the assessment roll for Dahlgren Road, and authorize the city clerk to certify the assessment roll with the county assessor, as this can be paid in full, or again, can be applied to the owner's taxes, typical of another assessment. So number of attachments in here, a lot of materials, so I think I'll just open this one up to questions, and I will dive into the different reference materials as necessary to answer your questions. So.
All right. Lynn, questions?
Yeah, of the 131,600 and the 135,700, let's just call it $280,000. That's far cry short, about 120 short of the 400 you just brought up. Where will we be making up that other 120,000 from?
That's part of the overall funding plan, that would be covered by, bonding. Effectively, it's gonna be coming from bonding from either the storm sewer or the street bonding. And that was built into the JCP budget. So this dollar amount was a part of the budget with the overage and differences, coming from the overall project budget, which included both bonding for utilities and for streets.
Thank you.
Glenn took my question. Dan, can you that's a portion of the project that the city bears 100% versus the split with the county?
Yeah, the JPA maintains that the city pay for local streets, and yep, so Dahlgren would be one of them. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Joy, any questions?
I apologize. I didn't get through the entire developer's agreement, but the assessment of the 135.7, it was supposed to be split equally amongst the property owners. Is that correct?
It is the assessment roll that you have in front of you splits it equally between the three property owners.
And that was part of the agreement, specified that split?
Well, the agreement was vague as to how it was specified, but that was the fact of the decision made by staff and consultants, just allocated equally amongst them.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Christy?
Larry, I'm going to ask you a question here. I think it's probably for you. I know we've heard from a couple of these property owners, and they had a lot of questions about how this was moving forward, and there was some disagreements on their side about this assessment. Have you had additional, I guess, talks with them? Are they an understanding now of the assessment process and how it was part of the agreement?
I don't believe that the property owners are in agreement with this. I think they're upset that they're being assessed. Simple and straightforward. I understand that, but from my perspective, this is a developer's agreement that's binding on the property. There's really not a lot to do here. The agreement controls, it runs with the land, it binds the property owners, it binds the city. We're at the point in time where we have to assess it. I totally understand if the property owners aren't happy about it, but there's really very little that the city can do here. The agreement controls, and the agreement says pretty clearly what's going to happen. The assessment gets imposed, conditions precedent to impose the assessment if they're met. The recommendation to the council is to be adopt the resolution.
All right, thank you, Larry. And that's my only question.
Lori, any questions? No? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion. I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 116-21 to adopt the final assessment rule and to authorize the city clerk to certify the assessment rule with the county assessor, if not paid in full, according to the terms included in the resolution.
I will second.
Oh, not everybody wants to second. I heard.
I'm sitting here,
Glenn
though. I'm
first,
sitting here.
Probably only because he was sitting next to me. Sorry, ladies. So we have a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All right, Ashley, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry.
Aye, Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock.
Aye, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer.
Nay, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight.
Aye, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. Motion passes 4-1. All right, thank you. Moving on to, we got one more thing and then, but don't want to jinx us, but we could be here for another hour. You never know. Okay. Okay, item 8.3, the 2021 Strategic Action Plan. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is kind of the third step in our process related to our strategic plan for 21-22. Earlier in the year, the City Council, along with department heads, went through a strategic planning exercise. And then at your last work session, we came back with an action plan. I got some feedback from the council. And tonight, we're here to present what could be a final draft of a strategic action plan. If you have additional edits or you want us to go back and look at a specific item, we're more than happy to do that. What you'll see new to this, in addition to some of the wordsmithing and maybe redefining of projects, as we've added a target date and then corresponding project lead. So our idea would be on a quarterly basis going forward, once adopted, to update the city council progress. So moving into the first of our strategic initiatives, communications and engagement, would be to refresh the city's new resident welcome guide for the spring of 22 with Vicky Sanzaiden and Nicole Kraus working on that. So that's a guide that's sent out to folks that apply for a new utility account. And so somewhat of an imperfect science to get everybody that comes in. So as we go forward with that and present drafts, if the council has feedback related to how we can spread our wings, so to speak, with getting that out, open to that feedback. Number 2, obtain training for the city council and department heads on bias and inclusion. Even though I'm listed as the project lead, that would be something that we would contract out for an expert in that area. Hopefully to do something like that in person, just based on the kind of the complexities on that subject. Number 3, use inclusionary and plain language in developing communication materials, updating code sections and policies and other city documents. So really a way to reach out to residents, developers, other stakeholders, if you will, on making our communication materials clear, that we stay away from the jargon that maybe what we're used to seeing on a day in and day out basis. Number 4, coordinate, so that'd be an ongoing item. 4, coordinate welcome events in parks to promote community engagement and education between residents in the city. So the spring of next year really would rely on our partnership with the Chaska, City of Chaska and the Recreation Department to put on an event. Number 5, prepare an analysis related to cost, strategy, and staffing in the area of communications and media. Excuse me. So I'd be working on that for the spring of 22. I'm really kind of looking at ideas related to partnerships, what our needs are, not just kind of with communicating the message in written form, but what we want our media and the presentation of that media and communications to look like. Number 6, prepare an annual and user-friendly residents guide to educate, and share information regarding the city's water service. So for the winter of 22, one of the things is to kind of related to kind of that plain language speak. We talked a lot of the contact that we have with residents and other stakeholders regarding water is when something goes bad. And so trying to fill that gap with education, resources, and to create a dialogue related to our water service. And then finally, discuss the possibility of a large event permitting and regulation. So I'll be working with the city attorney, looking at sample ordinances, pros and cons, and getting an idea if the city council wants to pursue it and to what degree, getting into the winter of 21. So with that, I'll pause and be open to questions related or feedback related to these strategic initiatives.
Council, any thoughts on the communications and engagement portion of this plan?
No.
I think they're great.
No.
Okay. I like them as well. Let's move on.
So moving on to our second area, community development. A pretty significant one, coordinated with Aaron Smith with a partnership through the CDAs to coordinate a workshop to learn and discuss housing issues in the areas of life cycle, affordability, have a discussion related to first-time home buyers, housing programs, for example, the land trust program, and then follow up at a future meeting to discuss desired outcomes and create a corresponding action plan. So if the council remembers, a number of years ago, we had the Urban Land Institute out to talk about areas primarily more towards commercial, but we never really followed up with a defined action plan. So once we get this information, have the dialogue with the CDA, kind of the, no pun intended, resident experts in that area, to come back and then have a conversation about what to do with that information and make them actionable items. The second one, review sample building and design regulations for commercial and industrial buildings. Review and discuss sample ordinances, cost impacts to regulations, and overall perspectives on different approaches. And so this is one of the things that we talked about specifically in the strategic planning exercise was looking at ordinances and maybe a different way of, they maybe look great on paper and they sound great in the course of a dialogue. But what's it gonna mean when, for instance, Aaron Smith is in a meeting with a developer and says that you have to do a masonry finish as opposed to a hardy board finish? Are you willing to put her and support that position of the city when it comes to a certain design guideline and understand the impacts to that cost and the pros and cons of that? And we'll want to facilitate that discussion with you in the winter of 22. And then finally, discuss and define commercial, industrial, and mixed zoning uses within the comp plan. There's some new areas within your recent comprehensive plan, and so we wanted to have a conversation regarding that as it relates to the zoning ordinance, and then setting expectations and standards for the city's key commercial and industrial areas in the spring of 22. So Aaron would be our champion in these three areas to facilitate that discussion. And I'll again pause for questions or feedback from the council.
Council questions, comments? Christy's shaking her head. Lori's
Nope,
shaking
looks
her
good.
head. Nothing from Joy. Glenn?
Nope.
All right, moving on.
Our third area, downtown development, and I should note that these aren't in any specific order as far as priority as it relates to the buckets of initiatives. Downtown development is to perform a use study, cost benefit analysis, and seek out possible partnerships related to the future use of the church by the river. So for residents, that's the former council chambers off of Main Street East. And so this would be a partnership between, or a collaboration between Vicki and myself. Vicki would kind of gather the hard data related to cost to provide heating, cooling, internet, etc. And then I try to work on the development of concepts for the council to review. I should say that the first step in that would be a really broad brush approach. We wouldn't necessarily come to you with that a first presentation to say, hey, we have this partnership with the school district to do X, or the developer Y to do, some type of retail shop. We give it to you kind of incrementally in steps so that you could give us some direction on what feels right for you for the future use of that property. Second would be the development of a concept plan and cost structure that would redevelop Riverside Park as a hybrid, active and passive use park, working to highlight the natural features and the location of the park. So again, the concept was to kind of keep what's there related to campgrounds, archery, boat launch, but kind of the more manicured areas that don't have amenities, to maybe develop that, or let kind of the grass grow up, do some native plantings, and then have a turf trail. But that would have to be really kind of fostered through a conversation with the Parks Commission, facilitated by Aaron Smith and Chad Schell in the winter of 21. And then finally, prioritizing the demolition of the public services garage as a means to spark a catalyst development project on that site. That was a conversation related to the demolition of the public utilities building on the corner of Main and Broadway, and really as a first step communicating that to the public or residents of this community, downtown business owners, but really understanding, I'll have an update later on this topic in the meeting, but what to do with the existing storage in that building as it relates to the public services department. So, with that, again, I'll pause and stand for questions or comments.
Go ahead, Christy.
On the first one, when we were talking about the church by the river, if we could broaden the wording just a little bit. So it says perform the use study, the cost, if I can spit it out here, the cost or the use study, conduct the cost benefit analysis, and then it leads right into seeking out possible partnerships. I think that we need to allow ourselves to look at city options on our own as well of what we can do with it. If I'm just strictly going to read that sentence, it reads to me that we're going to look at all this in a study wise, and then we're going right out to look for a partnership with somebody else. When I think there's some due diligence there that we should look at it within our own city means to see what we might want for that for the future, being that it is a historical building downtown.
I don't know that I necessarily read external partnerships into that, but that's interesting. Does anyone else feel that way?
Well, whenever you say possible partnerships would lead to whom? And most of it would be external.
But it could.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Glenn at all.
When I read the word partnerships, I read it as it would be a partnership of somebody from external.
Well, yeah.
That's kind of how I read it too.
Christy, do you have suggested language?
I don't have anything specific, but I would like it to say, because the first part of it is very, specific, as we're going to be doing these studies. The second part is, and then we're going to go right out to possible partnerships. So I don't know if we have to the city look at internal possibilities and possible partnerships. I'm not against having the possible partnerships. I just don't want it to read as if that's all we're going to be taking a look at, because I think it's worth taking a look at what we might want to do just as City of Carver as to what we might want to do in conjunction with somebody else.
Is that clear?
I guess do you want
Possible options related to the future use of Church by the River. How's that for
I guess maybe a follow-up question would help me out. Is it related to how it reads, or what the council wants to get done? Because in my mind, and when I say study, that's a fancy word for like a 3-page memo from me, frankly. Where there'd be scenario A is as Councilmember Mock has referenced a number of times, some type of historical site. Scenario B would likely be marketed as a potential retail space and look into being a kind of quote unquote landlord. Scenario 3 would be something that none of us have thought of right now. And so in my mind, it kind of fits with what Councilmember Mock is saying, that we wouldn't go to any specific person without vetting it first to the council. So the specific work direction I understand, but if you don't think that is representative of that phrasing, I can just seek out possible partnerships.
I think that for me, the seeking out the possible partnerships without any other verbiage about looking at what City of Carver could do with it, I think to me that just sort of leads to that's what we're doing. And again, maybe that's not the way we're thinking right now, but we're all sitting here right now. And but that's what the document says, and that's what the wording says. So I don't know if we take out seeking, or we consider, that we consider city related projects as well as partnerships.
Yeah, if I could just propose a delete of seek out possible and replace with consider. So it would read, perform a use study, conduct cost benefit analysis, and consider partnerships related to the future use of Church by the River.
I feel kind of strongly about having some wording there about that we're looking at us doing something and going to outside partnerships as well. So I do think seeking out and changing it to consider is great. But if we want to put perform a study, you studied, and consider, if someone's coming up with some wording that makes sense, help me out here.
Consider possible partnerships.
This is Lori. Could we just insert seek out possible internal and or external partnerships?
Well, there aren't really internal partnerships. It's either, it's a city building at this point, I guess. So
Seek out possible options related to the future use.
I guess if I.
What is, I couldn't hear that a little, it's a little bit fuzzy.
Sorry, if you, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Mock, because what I'm thinking, I think I'm hearing you correctly, is you don't want to go out and seek partnerships with other agencies or groups, etc., without looking at what we could use it for first. Is that correct?
I'm really open to all of them, but I think maybe we should look at what we can do with it first and then look at partnerships, but I don't want to rule that out either. So I think it doesn't need to be an or, it just needs to be an and. We look at this and this. And explore city uses and consider partnerships related to the future.
How about I'd offer this, perform a use and need study, so that would imply this, I'm reading your face and that's a no.
Again, that's on the study side, not the seeking out the partnership side. So.
But I think what Brent is saying is that covers it. Like, we're really getting deep into the weeds and the words.
No, we are, but if we can just get a couple words right, I'm happy to move on. But I've said, I don't actually, if the wording covers that we're looking at internal and that we are also considering outside partnerships, I'm fine. To me, it does not say that here.
If we just deleted, just to advance it, perform a use and need study related to the future use of Church by the River.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Anybody else on the Zoom? Joy's shaking her head. Lori's indicating she has nothing. Glenn is about to gouge his eyeballs out. All right, moving on to infrastructure management.
Four areas in this. Number one, so just for those watching, the city has a letter of intent with Carver County to take over Casaf 40, or what a lot of folks know as Main Street or Old Carver Road, in the city as a city street once we turn 5,000. And so an idea looking to be advanced is to develop a pedestrian system that would connect the Carver Bluffs neighborhood, or kind of the west side of the community, into the downtown, and look at some possible other opportunities related to that. And so putting together a kind of a mini corridor plan for that area for looking at this winter. Number two, develop a budget and recommended timeline for recoding of the Carver Water Tower north of 212 for the summer of 21. So integrating that into perhaps our long-term financial plan. Number three, provide an opportunity for the City Council to review strategies for future mass transit, i.e. Southwest transit, and the future use of Carver Station for this summer. And then finally, review and prioritize projects within the Parks Master Plan. Again, I'll pause for council comments and feedback.
Comments, Glenn?
That looks pretty.
Glenn, ladies, Joy, I just saw
Looks good.
Okay.
Same, looks good.
Christy? Nothing from Christy. The only comment that I had on this is just how strongly I feel about that future of mass transit. And I'm glad that it's a earlier deadline rather than later.
And then last but not least, organizational development. Number one, prepare costs and a position description for a new finance director position to be considered with the 2022 budget. Number two, consider needs in communication, fire, and all areas of staffing within the next revision to the long-term plan. Again, we have kind of this glut of information and feedback from the city council that we can use to inform the next revision to the long-term plan, and have opportunities for the council to discuss that this summer. Number three, develop a needs assessment and strategy for information technology support. So Vicki would be leading that, looking at how we, as we can see tonight, looking at all the needs that we have related to information technologies or IT, and how we can integrate our software and provide better service maybe internally to our staff, so that we can provide the best support to residents. Number 4, conduct an annual employee survey to measure organizational culture, identify, there we go, opportunities for growth and development. So looking at that in the winter of 21. And then finally, provide an overview of the city's standing and progress within the Green Step Cities program, including a discussion on the possibility of adding electric vehicles to the city's fleet. So again, a discussion in the summer of 22. And you'll see the targets here are spread out between now and year-end 2022, with the design that at the end of 2022 and heading into what would be January of 23, we could be in a position where we'd have a different mix of council members. And so just wanted to be in a position where the sitting council here can kind of see your strategic initiatives going through, but then again spaced so that staff has enough time to get into the details of what you want to or have identified as your initiatives for the next 18 plus months. So that's in its totality. If you're comfortable, you could consider adopting it tonight, or if there's with the changes that were recommended, or if you want to see some additional work done, we're happy to bring it back to your next regular meeting.
All right, any comments on the organizational development slide? Joy's shaking her head, Christy's shaking her head, Lori's shaking her head, Glenn is shaking his head and raising his eyebrows. My only question is, Brent, what goes into conducting an annual employee survey and understanding that that's a little ways off, and maybe we haven't thought too much about that? Would that be an internal survey? Or are you thinking that we would have to hire someone?
Oh, I think it would be an internal. It's not something I think would be cost effective to hire out. There's, and I haven't reviewed it in depth, but there's some models out there. If anyone out there gets the Star Tribune, they've done, some people do that.
That's a newspaper.
You know what it is?
But they have best places to work, and I think they have kind of a template survey related to that. I don't know what that is or how comprehensive it is, or if it'd be overwhelming to our team. But I think it speaks to some of the threads of conversation the council's had in the last year or two related to understanding our culture, what it's like to work here, and looking at opportunities to improve that where feasible. So.
All right. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the strategic plan as a whole? If not,
The only comment I'd like to make is just I like the staggered date that we're spreading this out over the next couple of years. It is a strategic plan after all. I also do feel like the timing is very thoughtful, especially when it comes to priorities and budgeting for our long-range planning. So I appreciate that thought that was kind of put into the timing on a lot of these action items. So looks good to me.
thanks, Troy. All right, I would entertain a motion to adopt the strategic action plan. I'll make a motion to adopt the 2021-22 strategic action plan. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Johnson and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All right, Ashlyn, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Henry,
Aye. Glenn Henry.
Councilmember Mock,
Hi, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer,
Hi, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight,
I Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, Courtney Johnson. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0 unanimously. All right, communications 9.1, remarks from the city attorney. Mr. Harris.
First, a business item. We touched on earlier tonight. You will see sometime in the next month assessment resolution for Oak Tree, the Dog and Road project. I just wanted to let you know that we didn't move it through in conjunction with this because it's an amazing amount of busy work. We have to literally assess 200 homes. We have to kind of be careful about the notice when we tell them to send out the assessment. When we send out and tell them we're going to do this, that you're not really being assessed because we already have the money. But we have to adopt an assessment rule that levies the assessment against all those houses. So, because that's what the So I just wanted to let you know that's coming, but there's some nuance in that, because we have to craft it in such a way that the homeowners don't, well, what's going on, because we already have the money. So, that was a little, I just want you to know that's coming, there'll be some art to making sure that's crafted correctly. Dan and I have talked about the process for getting that done.
I suggest that at the top of the memo, it says, you do not have to pay us.
Yeah.
We already have your money.
Because I can just imagine phone calls and, maybe not, we already have your money, but.
I just wanted to know that was coming.
Thank you.
More importantly, but probably not as a deep dark secret, because in your strategic plan, I'm here to tell you that after 27 years, the city attorney retired.
What was the date?
June 30th. And I'm trying to tell you that with a heavy heart. It's been one of the great joys of my profession. Carver City Attorney. And, I mean, boy, this community's done some really interesting things, and it's really, really fun. It's word that you don't get to use a lot. Personally rewarding, very sensitive. Our firm has additional resources which we've been introducing to Brent and Aaron. You'll start meeting these people. Brent, I've already told Brent, so I got my cell phone. I know all sorts of past information in the city, and Brent knows where to find me. I'm never very far away. I talked about it, and I wanted to tell you. I'm old enough. Sort of making rounds of talking about it. This was the one that probably hurts the most. This city, I was probably more hands-on.
Larry, thank you. That's the definition of bittersweet, right? We're super excited for you. Spend even more time down in Florida when the weather's coming here in Minnesota, and golf and do all that kind of fun stuff that I know you enjoy, but we are going to miss you. This will now start search for a new city attorney, and I'd be lying if I wouldn't want to put in the job description a clone of Larry Harris, because not only can you defend us from anything or warn us about not doing something so that you don't have to defend us, but it's fun working with you, and I've seen you in a courtroom arguing a case, and I've learned a lot from you, so we wish you well. We're gonna work the heck out of you over the next couple of months before you retire so that you're ready for it. Sounds like that work is already cut out with the assessment roles for Oak Tree, but wish you well. Thank you for coming in and telling us. Let's see. With
Mayor Johnson,
yeah,
if I could just share, it's
yeah.
just kind of a funny story. So I've been working with Larry for 11 years now, and for, I would say, almost 10 and a half, he would never respond to any texts, so I just didn't even bother. And then on some wild occasion, not because he was, avoiding them, he just didn't do text, and that was kind of the thing. And then he must have figured out how to do a text. He texted me some critical information, and then it went by, and then I texted him later, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, I was just going to text you that one time. I wasn't expecting to text back. So he thought it was a one-way communication tool, and I don't know, I'm hoping that didn't lead to his retirement. But,
Was this recent?
It was within the last year or so. But well said, Mayor, on we're not going to be able to find someone to replace him. Larry's a true champion of the city.
I'd just like to say, Larry, you've been a pleasure to work with for the last 10 years. And I know that there's a couple developers that really want to be invited to your retirement party. If you know what I'm saying. You have kind of carved a path for Carver that, for 27 years, you've had a lot of impact on everything that's gone on in this city. And I just want to thank you personally for everything that you've done the hard work you've put in, putting up with the different councils that you have, but most of all, just for your dedication to the city of Carver. Thank you.
I'd just like to say also thank you, Larry, for all your coaching even through the commissions, because I know I worked with you for many years on the Planning Commission and truly appreciated all of your guidance and coaching as we, as the Planning Commission has gone through some tough, challenging Carver Crossing situations. And just want to say I appreciate working with you through that as well.
Thank you, Joy. Go ahead,
Larry, after all these years of butting heads together, I am so going to miss you. And I want to thank you for all of the things that you've done in Carver from when I was staff until being on council too. Because again, you and I have had some very spirited discussions sometimes, and I appreciate every single one of them. So good luck, Larry, and I hope to get your cell numbers so that we can all just text you constantly and see what happens.
All right. Let's see. I think, Brent, why don't we have you go ahead with the city manager's report?
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring up here I just wanted to mention the council, I'm gonna switch the view here. As the council saw on your consent agenda tonight, you had a resignation from the Planning Commission. I just wanted some feedback on whether the council wanted to, and you don't need to necessarily appoint someone tonight, but if you wanted to consider the appointment of your candidates from the last round of interviews, or if you wanted the staff to go out and put out an ad for Planning Commission applications. So looking for some feedback.
Yeah, so that was the one where I think we had 4 applicants, but one gentleman pulled his application the day of the interviews. Correct? Am I remembering that right, Vicki? Anyways, what I guess I'm getting at is I think we had enough qualified
Yeah, that was
candidates.
one of the most difficult commission decisions we've had in a long time.
Yeah, and I know specifically for planning.
Yep, yep.
And I think that there was one gentleman who we made a motion on and did not get appointed.
Correct.
I don't know, folks, assuming that this individual is still interested in serving on the commission, I'm comfortable if we can do it with appointing somebody tonight. Thoughts?
I'd like refreshers as the
Brent
commission
sent an
liaison.
email.
Mhm.
It came on Friday. The candidates were,
I'm just looking.
let's see, we had Kayla Pasco, Phil,
Schlechter,
yep,
John
I
Vollum,
believe he's the one who pulled, right?
Daniel Velick, and Kayla Pasco.
Yep. So I think John Bowen was the one who pulled his application.
You think or you know? That's kind of my point, is I'd like to have maybe a little refresher with each of the candidates. This candidate pool I'm happy with. I'd just like to see their faces and listen to them one more time.
Bring them in.
Mayor Johnson.
Sure, why not?
Hold on a second, Christy. I don't,
Okay.
so if we were to bring folks in again, I'd want to open up the application process again. Would you be able to watch did we record that? Is that something you can watch? Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, I was just going to say, if I heard Glenn correctly, I agree with him. I think that I would like a little bit more time to take a peek at it, since I don't have the information right here in front of me for each of the candidates. Were you hoping to appoint tonight, Courtney, or are you?
Brent, did you send the email only to me or did it go to everybody on Friday?
They all have it.
Okay, guys, you got an email on Friday with the candidates from.
Yep, I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
Yeah.
I don't have it sitting right here to look at the candidates. So
Yeah,
Okay. Go ahead, Lori.
I support just kind of picking up where we had left off. Not, having the city, start from scratch. But if we can just all have in front of us where we kind of had left off, Is it something that, like, process-wise, we could make a decision and finish up tonight, just so we don't have the opening longer than needed?
We
And
meet
clarify,
once
I
a
don't-
month.
I hear Brent saying we can appoint tonight. Planning Commission just met last week, so I don't know that we have a huge time crunch. I believe that there'll be one more meeting that we can have to make this decision. I don't feel super strongly on making the decision tonight, but I think we either need to work with the candidates that we had, but I think if we bring folks back in, we've got to open up the application process.
Do we
Then,
have
Mayor
to, Larry?
Johnson, are you? Oh, sorry, it's hard with being on Zoom in person.
Process, not legal.
Christy, Glenn asked the question of if we do have to open it up to new applicants. Larry's
Okay.
question was, it's not illegal, or Larry's answer was it's not a
Policy.
legal question, it's a policy issue. I just think that reeks of, I don't know, I'm just not comfortable with it. It seems like pulling our own folks in without opening it up to another application process, unless we just worked off of the previous interviews.
So I am comfortable with if we go to the next meeting and come in with a recommendation, if that is an okay process for you. I'm fine with not opening it up and going with the candidates we have. I just don't have all their information at the touch of my finger right now to look at who's who. So that's something we can look at the next meeting and then just go through the candidates that we currently have.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, would it be, I wonder if we shouldn't call folks and just ask and make sure that if they're still interested?
That might be a good idea too, huh?
That would be good.
So again, Vicki, are you able to confirm that it was John who pulled his application and did not interview with us?
I would have to go back and look at my email. It sounds correct, but I would want to verify.
Okay.
Let's bring it
Okay,
back.
so we're gonna go and check with the candidates that we had, confirm that they're still interested or not, and then bring it up for our next meeting to appoint. And we're appointing an alternate, correct?
You'd be, under your past practice, you'd be appointing your,
Second one.
everybody would move up the ladder. So your first alternate would fill the former Commissioner Lane's spot. The second alternate would become the first alternate, and then this position would be the
Second alternate. Got it. Okay, I'm comfortable with that plan.
So I would suggest that we, or I work with Vicki, she'd verify their interest. We'd put it as a work session item for your discussion, give you a chance to review their resumes, and then if you saw fit, you could appoint someone at your next meeting, your first meeting in May.
I'm fine
Sounds
with
good.
that.
Okay, and you guys all have the information already. It's an email from Brent that said confidential information, commission interviews that came on Friday. Okay, anything else, Brent? Actually, I think you just started. You probably have a laundry list.
Sorry. Yeah, a couple items related to the COVID update. We're still working through the details of the American Recovery Act and details related to when the city would get money and any corresponding policy initiatives or direction that we get from the federal government related to that.
Do we have a number on how much we're expecting?
We do. I've sent it previously. It's
Okay.
in that, I think it's just under 600,000 is what the last that I heard. I don't have it right in front of me. I think since the last time we met, the governor increased his capacity to 50%. So we've been implementing that space change in all our rentals. And I think I shared this in an update, but we are working with Marco, who is our current IT provider, on trying to find a solution to better integrate Zoom calling into the council chambers. I think it's working, but it could work better. It's a little clunky. So to kind of shine a little bit of light on that, or shed some light on that, it's not something that they had at their fingertips for how to do it. And so it's probably a new normal type of question for them to try to figure out, so it might take a little bit of time. So I don't want to provide the expectation that, you know, we'll be seamless at your first meeting in May. It's probably going to take some time for us to try to figure it out. I did mention, and it's been a while since we've been able to provide a space study update related to the fire department and public services building. Chad Shell and Chief Trimbo and I have been meeting with the WOL team for several months. Here and there have been some pretty big breaks as relates to probably every 6 weeks we'll meet. We're getting close to a point where we can present a draft of the findings. I know the council had previously said they were really interested in trying to keep the space on the current site, and all the options that we're considering, or the option that we're considering, does keep it on the current site. So it's on land the city does own, using the same resources that we do. So I'm looking forward to kind of bringing that back to the council and getting your feedback on direction, and if it's something you agree with, or there's more things that you want us to consider before wrapping that up and then formally presenting it to the council. And then we had our first union negotiation session with AFSCME last week. Chad Shell, the Public Services Director, is joining me at the bargaining table. We have another session planned for this Friday. And then, you know, depending upon how progress goes with that, at some point I'll be asking the City Council to schedule a closed session. It's one of the few occasions where the City Council can hold a closed session to discuss negotiating related to the collective bargaining agreement. We're just not quite ready to schedule that at this point. So happy to answer any questions, or if there are updates the council is looking for that I didn't share.
Go ahead, Joy.
Just curious, do you have an ETN when we're going to see first draft of pavement management plan?
Dan, would you mind jumping in on that? I know we've been talking about that quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say we've got an internal draft of our street rating now.
Yeah.
Right now, the bigger issue is what's the different I guess funding options that all would mean different outcomes. That's what we're working on right now, and so I would say we're probably going to defer until after we the dust settles with the LRIP, because that does drive a little bit of funding going into 6th Street. For example, you know, if that doesn't come through, we might think of things a little differently for the first couple of years, because as you know, the condition of 6th Street warrants a fair amount of money. So the short of it is we were going to wait till that announcement and then come up with a few different options, which would be June-ish.
Okay, because the LRIP was May?
It was May, but they are pushing back their announcements a little bit because they're busy, overwhelmed. I don't know. They just got a little bit more to do than they were thinking. So
yeah, they had a lot more applications than they were anticipating. And I can just dive a little bit deeper into that. As we wanted to put the draft of that together so the council had some options, and so we've been thinking about it as far as low, mid, and high, as far as your want to accomplish it and finish the pavement management plan. So for example, we're allocating approximately $120,000 in the pavement management plan. We didn't want to come back to you with a plan that says for 2022 you're going to increase your street maintenance funding from $120,000 to $890,000. There needs to be, or we want to present to you a way to look at different levels of funding, and then should you choose a certain path, no pun intended, there are maybe options. So if you defer maintenance on a certain street for so many years, that might take it from a simple mill and overlay to a reclamation. And then, you know, as you go down that rabbit hole, it could go to, you know, a full depth reconstruction. And so there are plenty of nuances and complexities related to the pavement management plan. We just don't want to present it to you with one option of this is what you have to do. So it's just that combined with understanding what we're going to need for 6th Street West is kind of where we're sitting right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Brent? Brent, I just had a quick one. Have we gotten any population estimates yet? Do we not get it this year because of the census?
No, well, we get it every year from the Met Council. It doesn't traditionally happen until middle to late May. So they run a cycle, which is it April 1st, Aaron? I want to say like their demographer year runs from April 1st to March 31st, or right around that area. So then that's when they get building reports from the city. I'm sure we've submitted ours, and then they take that, do some calculations, and send that back to us. So we're just, it'd be too early to get that right.
Okay, I was thinking it was late April for some reason. Okay. All right, council member updates. Joy, do you want to go first?
I don't have anything to report.
Christy.
Okay, a couple things. So we had an HPC meeting last week. It was Brent's first meeting as our staff liaison for the time being. It went, I think it went very well. Brent is going to be working on some procedural and structural things with the HPC group, which is good, and we'll be able to nail down a few things. I don't know, Brent, if you have any comments too about some things you were looking into with the state. I mean to put you on the spot, but
just a couple of items. So we will be sending out what we're calling a newsletter to the property owners within the historic district, kind of letting them know how the district is formed and the use of the guidelines, et cetera. Just kind of a reach out to let them know that if they're going to do a project to connect with us. And then just, one of probably the core things that we did is looked at the roles and responsibilities of the HPC. So just kind of looked into what our city code says and identified what the HPC does, what staff does, the liaison, just kind of the pieces within that. And then started developing a relationship with Shippo Michael Coop. I've been calling him Bob Coop because there used to be a monk at St. John's that came to the information desk all the time to pick up his Star Tribune all the time. So that's ingrained. He always wanted that Tribune early on Sunday mornings. So I digress.
Immensely.
You sure did.
But just using that as a resource. So there are a lot of resources, and I can share some of these with the council. But the primary thing is there aren't a lot of hard and fast rules related to like what specific things need to be done related to a project in the HPC or the historic district. The guidelines really put the HPC and eventually the council, if something is appealed, to look at all the conditions. Is the project front facing to the street? Is the property a contributing building in the historic district? Was the addition where a certain window is put on, was it original to the home or was it an add-on in the 1960s? And so to me at least, and I tried to, and I will be kind of working with the HPC over the next several months, is to try to help them develop a better understanding of that so that as a group that we can learn, so that when we do have applicants come in that we can feel really strong at our core with, what our guidelines say, how we implement them, and how we communicate them with property owners. Because, it's a unique touch point where we may not connect with a certain property owner or building owner for many years. And if they come in and have a negative experience with our HPC, it can repeat itself. And so we have some opportunities. We have a really good group, really interested group. And so we're going to look at seizing that over the next few months and developing some good systems and processes. And I apologize for the college work-study program story, but
No, you don't.
Okay.
if I can talk about St. John's,
We know.
I'll do it.
What about the merger? That's for afterwards. Okay, Christy, anything else?
yes. So on our next work session, can we add talking about the permitting of food trucks in the downtown area? We had a food truck down here this weekend. By the way, downtown Carver was a happening place this weekend, and it was really fun. The ice cream shop is open. The Carver General and the other shops were open. The bars and restaurants were open. We had a food truck down here with great food, and they are coming to Steamboat Days, so I'm excited about that. But we do have a mix of residential and commercial down here. So I would like to just have a conversation about what that looks like, since we do have homeowners in close proximity to things like generators all Saturday starting at 9 a.m. So let's, if we can put that on the work session for next meeting, that would be fantastic. And then Chad, with all those people, even though it's snowing today, right? It's time for picnic tables at Gazebo Park. There were so many kids playing and families sitting there and just sitting in the grass. So if we can get 2 or 3 of them down there on the Broadway side now, not my dining room side, that would be great.
Will do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mock, would you, just for, because the discussion on the food trucks is likely something that I would delegate to the city attorney, would you mind just sharing a few thoughts on, just so he can maybe have some items prepared in advance for that conversation, so you get what you need at the next work session?
Absolutely. So we have had food trucks here a few times in past when the Carver Junk Company was here. And then we did have one here this weekend. We don't see them very often outside of having special events, you know, Steamboat Days or the car show or something like that. And again, for me, this is not a gripe. This is maybe just wanting to take a look at being considerate to the fact that we do have a mix of commercial and residential down here. So for an example, this Saturday morning, the generator started at about 9 a.m. So like my neighbor was walking down the street and we were talking from the sidewalk to my front porch, which is not far, having to yell at each other at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it went till about 4 in the afternoon. And again, that I love the food truck. I think it was great. But do we look at possibly going to something where they're allowed first and third weekends of the month? You know, we have a lot of noise pollution down here, and I use pollution with a light term, but it's a noise pollution. You know, we have a lot of traffic that, whether we realize it or not, comes through for the morning traffic to go to work in the morning, the school buses, which everyone has that too. We've got, you know, traffic for the stores down here, but we have financial things, City Hall, the post office. And then of course we have the evening crowd that comes in for dinner and for the bars. And then on the weekends, we have that too. And again, I love seeing people all over downtown, but we get a little bit of a respite on Saturday and Sunday mornings where we don't have to hear quite as much noise. And generators are loud. They are very loud. So possibly just so that everyone kind of gets the best of both worlds. Yep, we can have the food trucks. It's busy. There's stuff going on to maybe, you know, we can have a weekend here where it's a little bit quieter. So I guess maybe looking at doing something where we can permit, you know, first and third weekend of the month or something like that, that's allowed, just so that the residents down here can get a little bit of a peaceful respite some mornings too.
Are we currently permitting those trucks?
The city regulates it through its transient merchant, where a simple background check is. So
my recollection is a couple of years ago, we looked at comprehensively regulating food trucks, and we're not going to go there.
Oh, Larry, could you talk right into your microphone? I'm sorry, it's a little bit.
Sorry. So a couple of years ago, we looked at this pretty comprehensively, and then there was a elected decision by the council that, to be blunt, we were over-engineering. And so now, if there's a specific issue, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can basically say no food trucks. You can say no food trucks without a specific permit. You can say no. You can say food trucks can only be in certain specific areas at certain specific times. It's not particularly difficult as the city attorney to draft a code section to do it, but I think there needs to be a little bit of, this might be a good work session topic to have the council sort of flush out what you're thinking, what the restrictions are, because my recollection from the last time, it's kind of a push-pull. You don't want to be too onerous if the food trucks don't come, but you don't want to be too liberal, it turns into a Wild West. So if nobody objects, I think my suggestion would be the topic just on a work session. I can listen to what the council is saying, develop a consensus on draft.
Okay. So Larry, if I heard you right, then we'll finish discussing this and then you'll draft it after the next work session?
Right. I mean, so I can get, so all the council members can think about it, give them, you know, some time to sort of formulate their thoughts, and then, you know, frequently after the work session, everybody just talks about it. You know, I kind of see what's going on, and I'll prepare a draft, and we'll review.
Sounds good to me.
All before June 30th.
Anything else, Christy?
I think that is it. Thank you.
All right, Lori?
Really just upcoming things. First, with upcoming things, I love how the website, so thank you to the team that's been getting the variety of things. There's such a variety, including the Lions Club has a pork chop dinner end of this month. And then as far as Parks Commission, our next scheduled meeting is May 10th. So that's all that I wanted to share for updates. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate it. The Lions have on the 30th their pork chop meal, pork chop dinner. I want to thank Jennifer Lane for her years of service on the Planning Commission. She, I don't know, how long was she in town? 5 years? 6 years? But she came into town and she was eager and motivated to be on a commission. And she put a lot of time, effort, and energy and a lot of work, and she did phenomenal work for the commission. So I just want to thank Jennifer again. She was a pleasure to work with. I want to thank the Domses and Ashland for putting up with us for as long as you have.
You're almost done.
Yep.
Seriously, like
It's almost 2 hours. And once again, I want to thank Larry. You know, you're going to be missed, Larry. You just are. So, but we haven't seen the last of you yet. So, anyway, thank you again.
all right. What?
How painful was it coming to a meeting and not zooming it, Larry?
I like
I
Zoom.
think we saw how much.
It made my life a lot easier.
All right, from me, so I echo Glenn's thoughts on Jen Lane's resignation. We were on the Planning Commission together, so she's been on for 5 or 6 years, if not more. And she was eager. She was all the things that Glenn said. And she also really grew the role and learned about zoning and all the nuance. And I think her first meeting may have been the Carver Crossing meeting. So she had trial by fire. So it was she was a really great addition. She's leaving only because of her husband's relocation for work. So let's see. In the last few weeks, we have had a Carver Business Alliance meeting that I caught the tail end of on Friday. That continues to be a really good group and really well-attended meetings. I think I've told council, you guys before, that League of Minnesota Cities has really good webinars. I attended one for the legislative update and just a really good overview of everything that's going on in St. Paul, the things that we should keep our eyes on, what's pending, what's off the table, all that kind of good stuff. We had a community leaders meeting last Friday, which goes along with the joint school board meeting. I think it was probably one of their first ever meetings where they invited the mayors and the football city councils on all of our 4 communities, which feed into the school district, as well as the Carver County commissioners. And that was a really good meeting. I believe that Brent forwarded the deck, the PowerPoint presentation, the slides from that earlier today. So if you weren't able to join, please go through that. Let's see. Oh, and then I am continuing, I kind of alluded to it during the presentation on the levy, but I'm continuing to go through and try to shake all the trees. And last week I emailed folks in Senator Klobuchar's office, Senator Smith's office, Representative Emmer's office, and then folks at the state level. So Governor Waltz, folks from MnDOT, which in a weird way, and I learned it last week, that infrastructure is bucketed with transportation, so that's why you go to MnDOT for infrastructure help. Who knew? But still trying to hopefully get match money for that money that we'll be on the hook for the levy project. That is it.
I had one more thing. The Planning Commission did vote for a new commission lead, and Reed Welch will be the the chair, and Gregor's will be the associate chair, so that's the only other thing I had.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, if nobody else has anything, I am going to have Ashlyn walk us through this. So, what you're gonna say is, it's like all highlighted, so you say.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So then you say.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Henry,
Motion by Councilmember Henry,
seconded by Councilmember McKnight.
seconded by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion?
Doesn't look like anybody has anything, so we'll go before. Oh, we already did that. Oh, and then, all right, so, Ashley, do you mind taking the roll as well?
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Henry,
Aye. Glenn Henry?
Councilmember Mock,
Hi, Christy Mock.
Councilmember Sayer,
Oh, you're on mute.
I, Lori Sayer.
Councilmember McKnight,
Hi, Joy McKnight.
Mayor Johnson.
Hi, Courtney Johnson.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
everybody.